All right, Russell. Good Friday night. How are you doing tonight?
Well, surviving another day. Tired as all get
Yeah,
out. Been a long week, but
it has been a long week for us as well. So, welcome into our weekly podcast for SSR, where we're going to talk all things SSR and have a little conversation with one of our drivers tonight, and maybe talk about what our results were this week, the tracks that we hit, and what we've got going on next week in the truck and the cup series, and then again to kind of go over our Xfinity series. So a lot of things to get to tonight. Ron is having a date night with his wife, so he's not going to join us tonight. But what we do have is we have Mr. Ira. Ira has been running with us since the very beginning, and I can tell you, especially in the truck series, before we bring Ira up, in the truck series, I've really noticed a really strong past 4 to 5 weeks with him. And one of the things that I have noticed is some really good speed, but some really good truck control and
yep.
picking his spots where he runs and picking his spots to be aggressive. But what I'm going to do is we're going to throw him up here a little bit, and then we're going to kind of just play a little um, a little music to bring him up here. And this will be the first time we're going to start doing this from now on when we bring people up. But let's bring him on up here. So, all right, Ira, can you hear us?
Yes, sir. I got you.
All right. We'll do some more specific themes. Maybe next week as we bring you up, but we're just kind of playing around with it. But Ira, first of all, thank you very much for joining us. I know when we put these podcasts on, we want to interview the drivers, we want to highlight and spotlight the drivers, and so we appreciate you coming on with us tonight.
Yeah, not a problem. It's a pretty cool setup you guys have here.
Yeah, we want to do it because one, we certainly we want to bring some information to our league on the things that we've got going on, but we want to highlight, like I said, the drivers that we have. And I was talking to Russ as I was bringing you up, and one of the things that we noticed, and I don't know if you've ever seen this, Ira, but we actually stream some of the RCs. So when we do RC work on Tuesday nights, I'll stream it so that maybe some drivers can come back and they can see kind of what we see when we're RCing the events and the races. And one of the things that I think that Ron and I and Russ this last week were talking about was we've been really impressed. I think the past 4 to 5 weeks with not only your racecraft, but it seems like the finishes are getting a lot better too. And would you kind of what would you kind of attribute that to? Is that really kind of the trajectory of the league, or have you really found something out with this truck?
I would say it's more of a trajectory of the league and us actually getting long green flag runs. I'm not long green flag runs fit my driving style. When my brother Sam, whenever he started actually driving, he got into iRacing to spot for me, and spent a lot of money on a rig and a wheel, more than I'd thought that these things ever even cost is what he spent.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, you're done spotting for me. You're going to drive. And I was like, we've been NASCAR fans our whole life growing up. I said, I'm going to put it in layman's terms. Once you get into league racing, you're going to drive more like Mark Martin than you are Dale Earnhardt. Simple as that.
Yep.
Yep. Yep, that's really true. And I have noticed that with your driving, and Sam has had some good runs here lately as well. But kind of walk me through your philosophy, and we'll get into kind of how you started. Let's go ahead and do that now, and then we'll walk into your
Okay.
philosophy on driving. But really, what got you started in sim racing?
Actually, what got me started in sim racing was I had a spinal fusion.
Oh
And
wow.
one of my
Jeez.
brothers was like, look, you're going to go stir crazy sitting in the house for 6 months. And he bought me a Xbox 360 and whatever NASCAR game it was out in 2017. I can't remember. Um, and then, 2 weeks later, he showed up with a wheel and was like, "Here, get into it, get your blood flowing, get competitive." Um, and I met one of the guys that, or actually the guy that I got into the league for Tuesday, Brandon Massey. I met him on the Xbox, and he was like, "Hey, I'm jumping over to this iRacing thing," and I'd never even heard of it, and I was like, I got all this stuff for free. Why am I going to go spend some money on a computer that I know nothing about, and then different wheel and pedals? And then I looked it up on YouTube, and they had the dirt super late models. And growing up in a super late model shop, I was like, oh hell yeah, I'm getting that. And we had it out 2 months later, and kind of followed Brandon around. He'd get in there, have me share my screen, and he'd show me this and show me that on the computer stuff. And then we teamed up, and we ran for about a good 4.5 years together as Bohica Esports. And I was delivering for Pepsi at the time, and we actually got a pretty good sponsorship from Pepsi. I drove the Pepsi car, and he drove the Mountain Dew car.
Mm.
And there was somebody in one of those leagues, I can't remember which one it was, said that if we rolled into Rockingham, Darlington, or Homestead, the blue Pepsi car was the one to beat, and if we hit Talladega, Daytona, or um, Chicagoland, that green 65 car was the one to beat. So we had a pretty good run there, but life got in the way a couple years ago, and we went our separate ways. Went on different leagues, different nights, and work and being parents and husbands and stuff like that gets in the way sometimes. But it's clearing up now, so hopefully we can get that team bond back. And we didn't miss a beat the other night. We was laughing, having fun that whole time at IRP.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the goal, right? So when we get on these, and we try to do things that kind of emphasize that, because we kind of do this to get away from real life, if you will, and the everyday grind, and this can be frustrating because we're all ultra competitive. I don't think you would have a will if you were not competitive and you didn't want to win a race, so I think there's some frustrations there too. But I think overall, and what we want to bring to the league is just more of a direct approach, very very simple in how we operate and how the rules operate, but keep it light enough where we get to have fun. And fun for me is long green flags, and it's fuel strategy and tire strategy and things like that. Fun for me is not bumper cars. And so I think one of the things that I really appreciate, just like you said, and you said it perfect about when you're in a league, you have to run a little bit more like Mark Martin, and I think that you do that really well. Let's go back just for a second about SSR. So was that something that you just saw on Facebook, and how did you get into the league?
I was looking around for some different leagues. I was in a league that was trying to merge with another league, and there was too many people coming in during the playoffs, and there was wrecks, and people just um, they were just going at it on the mics and over the iRacing and in the Discord,
Hmm.
and you couldn't hear yourself think. And I was just like, this ain't. I've got a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old. If I want to hear people, complain at each other, I'll go start poking fun at them. I don't want to hear grown-ups do it. And I started looking around at what was starting. I've been mainly a Cup and Xfinity guy for a long time, and I seen that you guys. Well, it was on the iRacing recruitment page, I think it was
Hmm.
on
Yep.
Facebook, and I saw that, and I saw the schedule, and I was looking at it, and I was like, that schedule kind of fits pretty well. And um, I think I messaged you, I believe, about recruitment races, and went in and joined a couple of those, and um, liked it, joined the league, and here we are.
Here we are, and I think um, you know you're right in the fact that, and I think we've all been in several leagues, and I think the main goal that we have is one. can we reduce the amount of that, right? So one of the rules that we have obviously is the comms rule, and we're very, very strict on the comms rule because of exactly what you said. We don't want a lot of yelling and bickering, and we want a place where people can feel comfortable. And wrecks are going to happen, and people are going to push too hard because they're going to want to win, and somebody is going to wreck someone, and that's just part of racing, and it's being able to manage that. But we want everybody to know, we're all a big family here, and next week we'll come back out and we'll do it again, and we'll try to do it a little bit better, because we're not, coke level drivers. We're here to have a good time, and really make it nice and respectable. So we certainly appreciate you being in here. So you mentioned a little bit earlier that, before we jumped on the podcast, that Sam was actually a spotter for you.
Yeah, when me and Brandon were sponsored by Pepsi and Mountain Dew, I was sending him the links on YouTube, and uh, we were we were having fun, and Sam was watching the links, and he was like, "Man, I got to get into that." He was like, "Some of those broadcasts are really really good," and I was like, "Well, you could spot for me." And my older brother, he's my oldest brother. He's an Army vet. I won't take all his thunder away because I'm gonna make him do this podcast too.
Right.
But he's I'm the baby of the family, um, and he's the oldest. So we didn't. He's 10 years older than I am, so we really didn't grow up being close. But as we've gotten older, and he's retired, and I've grown up and got married and have family, we've gotten to be the closest out of the brothers. And he's real timid. There was probably his first two races where he would be two corners late saying clear high. He didn't want
Mm.
to talk over anybody else or
Yeah.
different things like that. And I'm like, dude, I was like, your voice is the one that I need to hear. And I will never let him live this down. I know he wouldn't tell it, so I'm going to.
Okay.
We rolled into Dover in the Xfinity cars, and it was 105 laps. And I was like, man, if I don't use any brake and I roll out of the throttle and it goes green, we can make this on one stop. I was like, you tell me when we have 54 laps and it's in the green. Um, Brandon got him all the stuff set up on his computer and stuff like that to where you could see it. And he's like, okay, pit now. And I was watching the black box in the car, and I was going probably 3/4 throttle, not pushing it. Everybody was, hauling ass down into the corners and burning their tires up off the corners. So I was like, all right, they're going to 3-stop this race. We had the entire field 1.5, almost 2 laps down. I
Mm.
was just sitting there cruising, and I was like, are you sure we got enough fuel? You sure we got enough fuel? He was like, yep. I get to the white flag, and the car just shuts off. And before I got around to the checkered flag, I was like, you have to complete the last lap.
Oh, he counted it a lap short.
Yes, he counted it a lap short. And the
Yeah.
Oh no.
best part of that story is my wife at her work got him a gift card with like 76 cents on it and had me give it to him. And there was a note with it that said, this will buy enough gas that would have got Ira that Dover win.
Yeah, that's hilarious. And to Sam's defense, I have actually done that myself, because I always don't count the last lap. It's 2 to go. No, John, it's 3 to go. So certainly I have done that before, but that's a great story, and we're glad to see Sam on the track now, as well as, I'm sure he was a great spotter in his own right, but we're glad to see him on the track too. And let me ask you this, and it'll be SSR specific. So, in this league, certainly we all join a league, and we have that first, what we anticipate early, as we join the league. And we've seen the I rating caps and things like that we had here at SSR. Do you feel like, the competition is at the level that you thought it would be? Do you think it would be a little bit less, or maybe a little more?
I think it's at the level that I thought it would be. I knew there was going to be, in every league, there's 2 to 3 guys who are crazy fast on short runs, and then
Hmm.
20 laps into the run, you're catching them, and you got to find your way around them when you know their car or truck ain't handling the best. Um, but the racing from top to bottom has been pretty good. Everybody seems to run really, really clean. Obviously, as it gets later on into the race, you're fighting for every point.
Sure.
But the competition, I mean, at IRP, you could have thrown a blanket over 5 or 6 trucks at one point, and that was third through ninth. I mean, at any given time, it was,
Yep.
if you wanted to push right there, you could have went down on that low line and then wiped everybody out coming off of turn 2 or turn 4. But everybody held their stuff together, and it's been pretty respectful.
So let's talk about you brought up IRP. Let's talk about IRP for a second because I think one of the things that shocked me when we put it on the schedule, we wanted to do something a little bit different, and we wanted to throw another short track in there for the trucks, and kind of get away from all the mile and a half tracks that we had on the schedule. And so when we put IRP in there, I was shocked that at the amount of drivers that had never been on IRP before, especially in the trucks, because I think last season, if I'm not wrong, they had it on a week for officials. So, was this the first time that you ran IRP?
Oh, no, no.
Okay.
That was actually, other than at that time Kentucky, I would have considered my home track.
Mm,
Other than Kentucky, I do believe IRP was the second track I downloaded because, I mean, growing up in a racing family, everybody was fans of NASCAR and the dirt racing that we have around here. Um, we watched Thursday Night Thunder in the race shop, and I'd be, you know, 6, 7, 8 years old watching, Dave Despain on ESPN on Thursday Night Thunder
Dave
talking
Despain.
about, the non-winged, the USAC Silver Crown cars that they would have there, and you get to actually race on, well, as close to racing as I would get to on one of your earliest memory tracks. That was one of the first things that I was giddy about with iRacing. So I downloaded it quite early.
So let's go back a little bit because you brought up some things that kind of spurred on a couple of questions. So let's go back to your early. Tell me about your in real life racing adventures. So you've made. I'm assuming that your family has really always been into racing.
My dad was my dad and mom grew up in New Hampshire and Vermont, and that's where all of us 5 kids were born. Um, and then they moved to Kentucky shortly after I was born. But he was in Vietnam, and he actually got a letter in the mail from Roger Penske wanting him to work for him in the
Wow.
70s. Now he
Wow.
turned it down because that would have been Virginia, North Carolina area, and nobody knew NASCAR was going to blow up to the way that it did. Um, but no, we would watch every single practice, every single race, everything. Dad had one of those big old satellite dishes with C band and KU band, and he could get the
Yeah.
wild feeds where you could hear Benny Parsons and Jerry Punch cussing at each other during the commercial breaks and stuff like that. That team right there that they had on ESPN was the best announcing team ever, in my opinion. But no, I definitely dirt racing is in the blood. Um,
That's what I
most of
was just
my
gonna.
Go
That's
ahead.
what I was just gonna ask. You said you grew up in a super late model shop. Who was it that ran in the super lates?
It was a guy from Mayfield, Kentucky, who is a family friend, Randy Sellers. He was the 1993 UMP national champion.
Oh, okay.
That they He did everything his way, the right way. When they didn't have rules, I mean, he could have won by half a track at Clarksville Speedway on Saturday night, and then you'd roll into Paducah for the next Friday night, and he'd have a whole different setup on the rear end, just trying something, just trying to get faster. The
Yeah.
ingenuity was so much better on the dirt side back then.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now it's totally different. It's all about the bodies, and it's all about
Yep.
the shocks and everything like that. But definitely growing up in a setting like that, that's everybody had their own job to do. Like, Monday was wash day. Tuesday, it was me and Wayne Flint working on the tires. Thursday, I always loved Thursdays in the shop because that's when he would fire the car up. And firing a car up, I would try to stand behind the car because that's where all the fumes would get trapped, and
Yeah.
it would just smell. Oh man, I can
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
I can
Nothing
smell it
better
to
than that
this
racing
day.
fuel. Yeah,
Yes.
nothing
Oh
better
yeah.
than that racing fuel smell.
So let me ask you. I've always thought this because two questions that I have. One, my IRL racing was dirt track as well, and I am shocked at how terrible I am at dirt track racing on iRacing. That's one because for me it seems like the physics is so completely different. But second, the other thing that shocks me, and I'll go back to like Kenny Wallace, and guys like that steal Tony Stewart. Do you find it? I find it shocking at how the guys that have aged still find a lot of success in dirt racing than they would if they went to the oval side. And I'm not sure if it's the grind of sponsors or the grind of the season, but it always seems like the older guys that started there can still run and be competitive in dirt track. Have you always thought that was weird?
I think it has more to do with a rejuvenation for them. That
Yeah.
we can take Kenny Wallace for example. You're not going to tell me that 36 Jegs modified that he has is not as good as Nick Hoffman's modified was, or some of the guys around here,
Oh yeah.
Trent Young, you know Tyler Nicely, all them guys. Um,
Well, and
but
that's the thing is just Kenny's still out there winning races.
Oh
oh
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
He's
But
out there competing, 100 nights a week, and he's winning quite often in them.
yeah, but I think a lot of the success that David Rudiman builds modified chassis for a living now.
Mm.
I
Yep.
think a lot of that success, they went to the asphalt side. They minded their P's and Q's. They kept a smile on. They made their money. They sold their shirts, and then they don't have a ride all of a sudden, and they go back dirt racing, and it brings them back to when they were 8, 9, 10 years old, playing in the pits at a dirt track where their dad was racing, or that they just went to as a fan, and it brings it back to what started that passion that drove them their whole life.
Yeah, because I mean, if you look at Robbie Gordon, similar, right? I think I seen Robbie running the super trucks what two
Yeah,
years ago.
say he's
Um,
still running those. He
yeah,
still runs those.
and that guy can drive anything that has a steering wheel.
Yeah.
But had a small stint in NASCAR, and like you said, probably cash his paycheck, and then went back to what he knows.
Yeah, I think what you grow up around, like Tony Stewart driving an NHRA Top Fuel dragster, just baffles me. I mean,
Mm. Oh, it's crazy. It's
I
Yeah.
crazy.
mean, he grew up. I mean, even when he went to IndyCar, that baffled me because I'd see him 3 or 4 times a year here in a
Yep.
late model or sprint car or whatever. But
Yep.
I think he's got his rejuvenation from owning Eldora Speedway
Yeah,
and
I think
Oh,
so.
keeping all of the fans, the fan friendly atmosphere that is Eldora, that Earl Baltus had for years and years and years. Tony hasn't changed one thing about that track.
Yep.
no, not at all.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing is I'm a Tony Stewart guy. If you can't tell by my
I got
gigantic
you.
Tony Stewart
Yeah.
nitro back there, and I got the autographed hero cars from Tony, Leah, and Matt Hagan. I'm a big Stewart guy. I always have been. But it's his desire to race, and that guy can get behind the wheel of anything and be competitive and challenge for wins.
For
Well, he's
sure.
proven it. He's
It
proven
doesn't
it.
matter. I mean, USAC champion, sprint car champion, 3-time NASCAR champion. He went out in less than a year. I think it was 5 events with McPhillips Racing in that top alcohol dragster and won a national event.
Right.
IndyCar champion. I mean, the guy can drive the wheels off of anything, and that's why I keep I keep coming back to like Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson is another Tony Stewart in that aspect of that guy can drive anything and be competitive in it.
Yep. Yep.
Absolutely. He's a lot of people ask me because I grew up around the dirt tracks and I'm big into dirt racing. Um, Everybody always asks me why Larson isn't my favorite driver, and I'm in a weird spot right now because I was a Harvick fan from
Mm.
2001 until last year. Harvick was my guy, and I'm in a weird spot right now because I haven't been, you know, I don't have a driver to root for. It's more like rooting against the ones that I can't stand.
That's pretty
Um,
much where I'm at ever since Tony retired. It's like I follow the Stuart Haas guys, but I don't really have a favorite driver.
and
Yeah.
it gives you a different perspective when you watch the races on Sunday. And
It really does.
I can't jump on. I'm a huge Larson fan. I talked to him in the pits at Talladega earlier this year at the dirt track where he was running that Rumley 6 late model, and it was pretty cool because he was on one side of me, and one of the late model guys from East Tennessee, Mike Marlar, that I'm a big fan of, he was on the other side, and we was just sitting there, shooting a breeze, just like three normal guys. And I'm like, man, these guys are like two of my heroes, but
Yeah. Yep.
they're just
They're just
normal
normal,
people too.
just normal people. Yeah.
Yep, yep.
Okay, all right. So let's steer it back to iRacing just a little bit. So Ira, what do you have for a rig? What do you use for a rig?
I have and it's an L-shaped computer desk, and
Okay.
I have a gaming computer chair. I'm 6'5", over 300 pounds, so I'm a pretty tall guy. Um, we bought it's an Asus, I think it
Yeah.
is, computer from Best Buy in 2017. It was on sale. It was a gaming PC that hit all the specs and everything, and I'm still running it.
Wow.
Um, Running the Logitech G29 wheel,
Yep.
but Brandon was doing some research and he found these wheel adapters. Um, so I took that little small 9-inch wheel
Hmm.
off, and I have an actual Sweet Manufacturing steering wheel from Randy, the guy that drove the late models. It's one of his actual wheels that won several feature events throughout the 90s and 2000s. I've got that mounted on here.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. And I think,
That's-
and we're gonna have because I know that there are some people in our league that are looking to upgrade, and we're gonna have a whole stream. We're gonna bring Adam on, and Adam Pettit from our league. I think, and Russ, you and I were talking about this. I don't think there's
yeah.
anyone that has traded, sold, and tried more equipment that I know of personally than what Adam has. And I've went through a lot. I've went through a lot, but it's funny that you say the G29 because that's kind of the stalwart entry level
Yeah.
gear that everybody starts in. And to be honest, I believe there are still a lot of very successful iRacers that still use that. And I think,
Oh,
and I,
yeah.
Ira, I think you'll appreciate this because it's the same thing with racing in real life. It's all about comfort. And I think that drivers are very particular. They like to be comfortable. And sometimes, if a driver sits in a car that is not kind of tuned to the way they want it, the seat's not exactly right, the steering wheel's not at the right angle, it completely throws them off. And I think the same thing happens in a sim rig.
Absolutely. I mean, when I went to visit Sam last year and we went to the Darlington Fall Race, I got in his rig. He bought a rig. It's metal.
Hmm.
It's got like an actual racing seat on it and
Yeah, oh, yeah.
everything. And he's got the direct drive Fanatec, I think it is.
Yep.
Um, and he was having trouble on dirt. And I've got some setups that were sent to me by a setup shop, and then I've got my own setups for the super late model. And I got in there, and with the iRacing stock setup logged in under my brother, I didn't change a thing on the setup. I mean, I could feel the wheels slipping in the pedals, and the force
Hmm.
feedback was so much better. I was like 3/10 faster with the
Yeah.
stock setup than my setup. And
Yep.
he was, I did, I mean, it was just me in practice, and I didn't want to stop.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely takes you to another level, and we'll talk because I think there are some really quality upgrades for your rig that will make it better, and then I think that there are also some things that is just hogwash. It's just things that people say, "Hey, spend this extra money and it'll help you out." And I don't think that happens, but I think you can find value in anything in a sim rig if you think it's important to you. And I think it's all about being comfortable when you're able to get in the chair and you're able to go race. Because some of these, we ran the Brickyard 400 last night in officials, and it was a
Yeah,
three and a
how
half
did you
hour
fare in
race.
that? I'll say, how did
I
you fare in
finished
that, by the way?
I finished sixth
Did you?
last
There you
night.
go.
Yeah, but
I think
shout out to Christian Delgado because Christian won his split
his
at the
split.
Brickyard 400 last night. We were in the same chat, and he won his, and I finished sixth in mine. So yeah,
Yeah,
it
I
was a
know.
pretty good night for us.
I was gonna say, I know Ron also was attempting it last night. I don't know how he fared, if he even finished, because you know, I think he was in just about an hour, and they weren't even like 40 laps in.
Yeah, yeah, it can go really ugly. It can be really bad, and then it can be really good. So, all right,
Yeah.
so Ira, I'm going to put you on the spot. Trucks. Give me the three drivers in trucks that could take home the championship this year.
Oh man, um, obviously Blake Murray.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Um, Joe Hudson is fast everywhere, but somebody that you got to look at that he always seems to be um, there. It seems like to me towards the end is Shannon Wood.
he's
I've
getting.
seen. I
Yeah, he
mean,
is.
and anything could happen at any time once you hit the playoffs to Blake or Joe or anybody like that. But um, Shannon seems to almost have the same mindset that I do, where, let those guys go. We'll catch them in 20 laps or whatever. All it takes is the right caution breaks. And, people that have that philosophy, we're going to break through and get some wins.
I agree. I think you have to throw Dow in there. Because I think from a consistency standpoint, I think he's had a bad couple of finishes the last few weeks, but I think you have to throw him in there too. But I'll tell you, all of you guys, it's just like you said this week. If we go back to Tuesday's race, you throw a blanket over the top five or six trucks. They're all
Yeah.
right there. And that tells you the skill level is not only is it great because we put on some fantastic truck races, but also I enjoy watching it. It's the first time, I got out of the car. I've been sim racing for about a year and a half, almost 2 years now, and I've always driven. This is the first time I've ever even admin the league or anything. So I thought when I stepped out of the truck or the cars that I would be a little jealous. And a little bit I am, but because I want to be in there and racing with you guys. But I enjoy watching it because you guys have put on some shows like you talk about Joe. And Joe this last Tuesday he was sideways for 5 laps.
Oh, yeah.
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 So fantastic. All right, so give me three drivers in the cup.
Ooh, three drivers in the cup.
Don't pick me. I don't have a chance.
I was going to say, I'm not in the cup league, am I?
No, I
No,
haven't seen. Let's see.
no.
But have you watched it at all?
I've turned it on a couple of times just for like noise in the background.
Yeah.
Um, but I haven't paid attention to it really. Not like I have the trucks, obviously.
Yeah, and I can tell you from the racing standpoint, from both leagues, I think both leagues put on some fantastic shows. I think there's a little bit tighter. I mean, I was going to say there's a little bit tighter bit of competition here than there is in the Cup, but to be honest, there's really not. I mean, Adam absolutely dominated Homestead. And then we had a great race, Wednesday at Pocono, where we could have seen three or four people win that race pretty easily, and Joe come out on top. So there's quite a few things that can happen in the Cup. I'll be honest, it's the first time that I've been in a league where it didn't seem like there was a standout driver that you say, okay, that person's just running away with it. And now Blake in the trucks is just. I mean, he's won what well over half of the races that we've had. But I think there are some other truck drivers that are just as fast and can get there and compete with him.
Yeah, that's going to be the difference. I think with the truck and the cup car, the trucks, they seem to lend a hand to multiple driving styles. The
Hmm.
cup car, if you get on a mile and a half and that's your cliche or your niche and you're comfortable there, you're going to have, 8, 9, 10 dominant races. And like I said earlier, a caution at the wrong spot or, you know, wearing the tires out or whatever could change those races. But you'll find one or two guys that'll be up front at all those mile and a half races with that cup car.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point. Do you run a lot of officials?
I backed off running officials whenever I think it was when COVID hit and all the kids logged in under their parents' names and it
Yeah, yeah,
turned into a wreck fest every single race.
yeah.
And then, lo and behold, here came all the setup shops on the dirt side and they ruined that. So then it was just trying to find fixed setup races to run with very few people in them so I could go out there and have some fun.
So you've mentioned, we've talked about dirt quite a bit on this podcast. Are you excited to run a dirt track in the trucks?
Absolutely, absolutely. Me and Brandon were talking about it, and we were looking at the schedule, and I was like, I hope when we go to Kern, Kevin Harvick's Kern Raceway, that they accidentally set the server up as dirt.
Yeah, I probably would not do that, but I know exactly what you mean. And the problem we've had there are a lot of series and owners that have tried to put dirt tracks out there for the trucks, but they've taken away all the sets. And so Ron has kind of gotten a set for us through Maconie's setup that I think is going to work. We're still testing it, but for a while we were a little afraid we were going to have to take it back off of the schedule because you couldn't get the truck to go around the turn. But I think that we have a setup that might work for us at Knoxville.
I got you. It sounds good. I'm itching for it because dirt. I mean, even on the trucks, you still get that sensation of how fast you're going. Some of the
Yeah.
tracks on the asphalt side take that away. Like
Yep.
Homestead, you don't feel like you're going 180, 185 at the end of the straightaways. I mean, you got to have your point to let off to where you're not burning the tires off because it feels like you can drive that thing all the way through turn 2 wide open. On all the dirt tracks, it doesn't matter what car you get into, you feel that speed.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's a really good point, and I think that when we get there, we're going to see really a lot of the dirt drivers really show up, and it's funny because our league has a lot of guys that run dirt primarily. A lot of the other leagues that you find. A lot of the drivers have never touched dirt. It's kind of like road course, right? So if you have an oval league, a lot of the guys never run road. We have a lot of dirt drivers in our league, and so I'm really excited for this truck race because I think it's gonna have some fireworks.
It should be a good one. I mean, I think the biggest difference between running asphalt and dirt is on dirt, especially in the trucks at Knoxville. 20 laps into that race, you're not going to be wide open at all.
Yeah. Yep.
And I mean, you're going to have that's where pedals like the Thrustmaster ones that my brother has, those would come into play massively.
Yeah. So I do remember when I started iRacing, I went to GameStop and I bought. Well, first I started on a controller because I thought I could race on a controller, and you cannot do that. That lasted for about a week, but then I went to GameStop and I bought whatever the wheel and the pedals, and I tried to put them. And I was in like you, I had like an L-shaped desk, and every time I tried to hit the brake pedal, it just slide the whole pedal set against the wall,
Right.
And so as I upgraded, and I'm well beyond that now, but I remember that. I remember like jamming a book behind the pedals and the wall so that it stayed there and it didn't move backwards. But the pedals to me, in these setups, the pedals are that's the largest upgrade that you can do. The bases will help you out a lot. Button boxes, triple monitors, all that stuff helps. But man, the pedals make a massive difference, and I would assume they do in the dirt side of it as well.
Oh, it would be. I ran. I think I logged into a practice in the trucks at Rockingham when I got into his rig last year, and it was a totally different feel,
Yeah.
totally different. I mean, you could almost like if we went to Homestead, which Homestead is by far my best track on the sim on asphalt. If we went to Homestead with the feel in the wheel and the feel of those pedals, it was almost like I could close my eyes and drive that track.
Right. Right. Imagine, and they're kind of an intermediate pedal. If you get and again, we'll save this for when Adam comes on, because Adam's actually running a set of pedals that I truly believe in from a pricing standpoint. And they're a local company; they're out of Chattanooga, and he'll kind of get more into that. I'm not running those pedals currently, but I've ran a pedal extremely similar to what he has. And for the money, I think it's a fantastic presentation of a pedal for less than $300 for a pedal set. But so we do
I'm
have so. Go
gonna
ahead.
say I'm still under the impression that Adam actually races in an actual race car. I
Yeah,
don't think he's in a sim rig. Like he's
he's
running in
got
an
movie
actual
screens.
car.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he has.
he races in an IMAX theater.
Yeah.
That
So we have Charlotte, Ira, and then we're going to Kern. Um, do a couple of questions I have. One, this is a gauntlet, 22 races back to back, no weeks off. um you know do you think that kind of gauntlet helps you or hurts you? And then two, when you're looking down the rest of these tracks, and especially when we get into these playoffs, Bristol, Kansas, Talladega, Charlotte, Roval, how do you feel about some of these playoff tracks?
The playoff tracks minus the Roval and with the question mark on Martinsville, um, the playoff tracks fit right in my wheelhouse. Bristol is phenomenal on the sim. Um,
Hmm.
Absolutely love it in the trucks, and I've always played devil's advocate with Bristol. Everybody that loves the old Bristol, I mean, we have that racing right now at Martinsville in the Cup cars.
Yeah,
That's what we
absolutely.
have. You got to shove somebody out of the way to pass.
Absolutely.
When they redid Bristol and put that progressive banking on there, and when you go to that track and you see them coming off the corner in the high side and they're too wide for the lead most of the race, that's on a half-mile track.
Hmm.
That's phenomenal. Um, Kansas, there's a high side. There's going to be drafting. That fits well into my wheelhouse. Talladega it's a big question mark, but I
It
always
is.
run really well there. Um, the Roval, I haven't been on it very much. I can get around the place. It might be a race of survival. Somebody blows through their pit box or has bad fuel strategy or adds wrong or something like that. That could turn into a good one. Vegas it's a great track for the trucks.
It is. Yeah.
It's a lot like Kansas. Kansas will be more top dominant, but Vegas, if you can get through those bumps going into one, you can make that low line work.
Hmm.
Homestead, definitely, I got that one circled. And then
Martinsville.
Martinsville is a big question mark. And then obviously Phoenix. Phoenix is one of my favorite tracks on there, as long as the dog leg is closed. Um, people get people get too rambunctious way too early on in the race if that dog leg is open.
So you bring up a great point, and we'll talk about this, because, and this is kind of more of an overall league thing. But it is something that has come up a couple of times, and I'll tell you my position on it. And Russ, I want your position, and Ira, I want yours too, because for me in a car, I'm not saying I like three wide, but I'm not terribly mad if somebody takes me three wide. I just know if it's safe. If you're exiting a turn, I think if you're dive bombing somebody and you're going three wide, but if there's a lane, and somebody goes below me, it's my job, if I'm in the middle, to hold my middle line, or if I'm on the top, to hold my top line. And I think what happens is sometimes when people hear three wide in their headset, all hell breaks loose. And I'll tell you, I don't think it's the fault of the person that puts people three wide, unless Ira, you're sitting back and you're saying, okay, this guy I probably don't need to put three wide. But if it's drivers that you can trust, I don't care where you're at in the race, lap five or lap 100. Um, if it's safe and you go three wide and everybody has room, that's just racing to me.
Absolutely. I mean, you got to find the people that you can run door to door and have that contact 0x come up multiple times without losing lap time. And if running 5 laps side by side with somebody sticking their nose underneath you or their nose above you coming off exit,
Yep,
if you run 5 laps like that hard and you almost start to sweat, you're having a good time.
that's right.
You know,
Yep,
if you get like in here's another old school racecraft thing that I stick by. I will not block. If you've got to run on me, I'll crack the throttle coming off of the corner and let you have the high line, but I'm not going to necessarily concede the position, but I'm not going to chop anybody's nose. I'm not going to block, and hopefully as time goes on, the racecraft will be returned.
absolutely. Russell, where do you land on this?
Um, it like you said, it kind of comes down to the driver.
Yep,
There's like if you're side by side with somebody you can trust, but you got somebody behind you that may be known to be overzealous or something like that, and they take you three wide. Like for me, like I just back out of it.
yep,
I don't. Me personally, I don't have the skill level as a lot of the guys in the league. And I mean, it comes down to holding your line, but I'm
it
just
does.
not gonna, 5 laps in, 10 laps in, they want to go three wide. Hey, have at it,
Yep, and
because it's
and
gonna come back. It might come back to bite you later on. and
yeah,
then,
and
and then that's a position I get from you later.
you're right. I think more to Ira's point about blocking becomes more of an issue than running three wide or even touching doors or zero xing people, because
Yeah,
that stuff is going to happen. Because if I know, Ira, if you and I are running really tight and you want to squeeze me down, because you're on the high side, I'm okay with that, and I'm okay with rubbing doors with somebody. But I think what happens is, what happens to people that continually try to block somebody. So if you know that they have the low line going into the turn and you keep cutting their nose off, you probably only have one or two of those laps before somebody says enough is enough.
yeah,
And I think more wrecks happen with people trying to block than they do if people are just going three wide.
Absolutely. I've said it before on the sim. I don't think there should be a rear view mirror.
Yep.
That would alleviate so much, because you've got some drivers who paint that white line and do it beautifully every single lap, every single track. And there's other guys that like to venture around. I might not be able to run the low line as good as you at, say, Milwaukee, but you can diamond that corner and get the run off.
Hmm.
And if he comes down off of 4 where he's not running where you've followed him for 15 laps, you're not expecting that. And he's watching his rearview mirror.
Absolutely.
yeah,
And that kind of just, you know, unless it's 5 to go, 10 to go, something like that, it's kind of like, man, why are you doing that? Don't
yeah.
make me look like what you're doing right now,
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just like they say in NASCAR. Mirror driving will get you turned.
Yeah, and that's what happens. And we were actually running against a guy in the Brickyard last night in officials, and I come over the comms because I think there was about 10 laps to go, and the guy, everybody, I was able to poke a nose underneath of him, and he would just come right down as though no one was there, and he's getting the call that there's someone low. So I checked
Yeah,
up about 3 or 4 times, and I told him, I said, and I come over the comms, I was like, just don't get yourself wrecked. You know what I mean? Like, there's going to be a point where my fender is beyond your quarter panel, and I
yeah,
can't stop, but I'm trying to get a run because we're racing for a spot. At the very least, if I'm there, give me enough room to squeeze the car in. But I went by him, and 3 laps later, he gets wrecked because the other guy just never let off. And he does the same thing to him, and he lets. But it essentially kills you all.
Yeah.
If you're trying to block like that, it kills you all. So anyway, Ira. So just to move on, a couple of other things that I have for you in the truck league. Well, actually, let's go to the Xfinity League for just a second because we want to talk about that. And this league is generated, and the whole point of this Xfinity League that's starting up on 8/12 is to go 2,500 I rating and below. And the reason that we do that, and we understand that I rating is not a representation of everyone that can drive. There are people that are 15, 1600 I rating and they choose not to run officials and they're as fast as a 3500. But we're kind of talking in generalities here, right? You start a series and you want to be generalized. So the point of this league is to bring people into SSR and have that tier system. So you start here and then you move up to kind of the truck and then you'll move up to the Premier League, and that's the ultimate goal, is to watch people go through that progression. What we're finding as we've rolled this Xfinity League out is we're struggling to get a lot of feedback and a lot of buy-in to the Xfinity League. Do you think it's the car? Do you think it's the I rating? Do you think maybe it's the point of the league in general? What do you think it might be?
One thing might be during the summer is people are already in other leagues.
Yeah, it's true.
Um, we talked before, and I'm going to sign up for it. I don't know how many of them I'll be able to make due to just work schedule and kids and stuff like that. But um, definitely the Xfinity car is. I don't want to say it's more challenging to drive than the truck, because the trucks are a handful. If you dive it into the corner and it doesn't stick, the trucks can be more of a handful than the Xfinity car.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, I would say that not a whole lot of feedback on it would be due to people just being in the summer. I mean, kids are going to start school here, you know, less than a month here, and that'll free up, a couple of nights here or there for other people, and they might be able to jump in mid-season and they're just not
Yeah.
saying anything. Um, but with, you know, me personally, the I rating cap, it doesn't affect whether I'm going to join a league or not, because if it's unlimited and you got somebody in there with an 8,000 I rating, I've beat people like that before. So
Yeah.
it doesn't turn away. Um, it shouldn't turn away the ones that know what they're looking at, if I can say
Yep.
it like that.
Nope. That makes complete sense. So before and we have about 5 or 6 more minutes, and what are some other hobbies, Ira, that you have outside of racing?
Uh, Number one hobby is definitely trying to be a good husband and a dad best I can, especially in the way the world is now. Um, but biggest hobby for me outside of racing is hunting. Um,
Okay.
it's it's one of those things that just, if you grew up doing it and you were taught the right way, um, you'll make memories there just like you would at a dirt track or an asphalt track. Um,
Mhm.
Very lucky to have just won an elk hunt through work. I'm going to Idaho in
Oh wow.
October, and it is
Okay.
all expenses paid, staying at this massive lodge. And if you guys know anything about hunting, and elk tag in Idaho is very, very hard to come by. Um,
Yeah.
and then of course, I'm looking at everything to be doing with that, and they're paying for the flights, and I'm getting these emails at work and stuff, and I'm sitting here looking at, it's I got a month of deer season here before that elk hunt, and then I'll get to go to Texas in January with my good buddy John Shaddix. um, go to an outfitter down there for a whitetail hunt. So I'm actually traveling a little bit for hunting this year. Usually I stay around here and hunt Fort Campbell and a couple of the farms that are close to the house. But hunting is definitely, as my car should um, say that, if I get into that cup league,
Yeah.
it's camo with Matthews on it. So
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right, Ira, I guess we're gonna start wrapping it up, and we have talked to you for almost an hour, and sometimes these things go by, really nicely, and because you get to talk about iRacing, you get to talk about, and we're all kind of very similar in our love of racing, and I think that's really what brings us together, and that's what has brought a lot of the SSR teams together. And we thought about the series and we looked at it. And I think Russ knows the numbers, but we have about 90 drivers, I think, overall between the three series, the two that we're running and the one that's coming up. So we have a great family that we've started, and we want to continue to grow it. If you could point out something, and again, I'm putting you on the spot, but if you could point out something that you think that SSR could do better, or one thing that maybe you think that we're doing right. What do you think that we're doing okay at, and what do you think there's some things that we can improve on?
From my experience, the drivers meeting before the race is spot on. There's nobody can mic up during that thing. You have no excuse to be going and getting your drink or using the bathroom during that time. You mic up during practice and you say 15 minutes to driver's meeting or 10 minutes to driver's meeting, whatever. Um, if you got questions about what went over during the driver's meeting, everybody knows they just heard that. So they're going to be like, all right, I got to race this guy a certain way. He doesn't pay a lick of attention. Um, the uh, the communication during cautions, um, where the pace car is, where people could check up, or people pitting, and that's not you guys as a league. Well, I mean it's us as a league during in
Sure.
the trucks. Just better communication between the drivers. I know if you got like 2.5 seconds or whatever, you don't really have to say you're pitting, but just general racecraft, respect for everybody else around them, especially during cautions. There's you got to watch for the lucky dog and different stuff like that. And some people are watching the relative to see, especially damaged cars. I think it would suit everybody better if they were kept abreast of where the field is at.
That's a fantastic call out, and I agree. And I think race control can help out a little bit with that, as well when we go through it. So we certainly appreciate that. And Ira, if we're going to give you a minute, 2 minutes. If there's anybody else that you want to thank, call out. Here's your platform to do it, my friend.
I got you. Appreciate that. Definitely got to thank my wife, Callie, and my two daughters, Clara and Lorena. Um, got to thank my buddy Oscar with the Compass Cocktail Bar, Randy and Jennifer Sellers from RJS Automotive, Matthews Archery. Um, my mother-in-law and father-in-law usually watch it every stream that I send them a link to. My brother Sam, I'm going to get him out of his shell and get him.
Okay.
I, I don't
Yeah,
know if
he
he
needs
needs
to.
to.
I say he needs to get in here so we can have a little discussion with him about that fuel strategy.
Oh yeah, for
That's
sure.
right.
You'll have to bring that one up. I don't know if he needs to be the one to actually put a bumper to somebody once to get over that little hump
Hmm.
that he's just timid. I mean, he saves his truck and he's always there, but I want to see him be more aggressive.
Yeah.
Um, and definitely got to give a shout out to my buddy Bob. He usually watches all the links as well. So that's what I've got.
All right. Well, listen, we certainly appreciate you being on. And yes, get Sam in because we can have that conversation. It's that's another thing that you brought up that I think is really a great talking point for us, and that's aggressiveness when you're driving, because I think there is a extremely fine line between being overly aggressive and finding and picking your spots. And I think that ultimately comes with racecraft and the more laps you turn. I think if you can see the impending danger for what you're fixing to do ahead of you, then it stops you from maybe making some of those mistakes. Because Lord knows, I have, and when we were talking about three wide, it's putting certain people three wide. You should not do that, not because they're bad drivers, but because you don't want to get them sawing at a steering wheel when they're on the inside of you.
Right.
Yeah.
because they get nervous. So I think that's part of it. But there are a couple of points where for any driver where you have to stand your ground too. I have a team member that I run with consistently, and that's one of the things that I always tell him, because I think just like Sam Ira, I think he has that same problem too, where sometimes he feels he always gives way. So the next time that driver comes up to you and they're trying to pass you for position and it's two to go, they're always going to assume you're going to give way.
Right.
And at a certain point, he has to stop doing that and say, I'm allowed on the track. I'm allowed to fight for this position as well.
Yep.
Well,
Be
that's even, as I said, that's even something that I've had to get used to. Like,
Hmm.
we're getting closer to those playoffs, and like I'm slowly creeping in there. And it's like, last or this past week, Wednesday night was a prime example. It's like, me and oh, who was it? Jeremy Vaughn, I think. We had a really good back and forth battle. It was like, because at the beginning of the season, it was okay. You're inside of me. I'm just going to roll it and give you the spot.
Yeah,
Now I'm not giving it up quite as easy.
right.
and that's another point with being so big on racecraft. You learn who's teammates with who,
Sure. Yeah.
and you will race people differently. And it goes the same way. They'll race you differently if their teammate is the next car in line and you're on four fresh ones and you're going to get him and he's got to
Hmm.
finish in that spot to stay in the playoffs. Or if my teammate is that one up there coming down to the line for the playoffs, I'm going to race you a little bit differently than I would have all year.
Oh, absolutely. And that really comes up a lot on restarts, right? Because if you get a couple of teammates, and that's where the choose rule comes in. Because if you get a teammate that's running third, and you pick that different line, if you're the leader, so that they're right behind you, and you can count that down in a chat. That's going to help you, but then it's going to hurt you if you're not part of that team. So there is having that strong team dynamic as well. And when that's a whole nother conversation we can get into. But when you have a team, where does the dynamic fall? Do you want drivers that are all over the spectrum, or do you want drivers that are all kind of grouped together in the same kind of skill level, where they're always going to be racing around each other? Because that could be a problem too. But I think you're right, Russ. As you come down to the playoffs, the margins get tighter,
Yeah.
and the give and take gets a little bit less, and there's a little bit more aggression because you're wanting to get in there, because like you both said, once the playoffs start, anything can happen.
Yeah. Yep.
Anything. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you very much. It was a fantastic podcast, Ira. We certainly appreciate you sticking it out with us the entire time. It was a great conversation. Russ, do you have anything else for us?
No, just anybody watching that's in SSR, like like we've been saying, if you have any interest at all in joining the Xfinity series, please let us know. Sign up for it.
Hop in. It's going to be a ton of fun. I'm actually going to broadcast that one, so the
Yep.
broadcasting might not be fantastic, but here we are. This is what we have, right? So,
I'm saying
um,
I've added to the pot a little bit. Um I'm offering up iRacing credit as for the top three in points for that series too. So
yeah.
uh champion for that series is going to get $25 in iRacing credit, a trophy and a champions racing prize pack. Um, and then second place is going to get $15 in iRacing credit. So basically your entry fee back plus the trophy. And third place in points is getting $10 in iRacing credit and a trophy too. So there's definitely some things in there that's worth joining for. So
All right. Well, guys, Ira, again, thank you very much. Russell, thank you very much. We will see everyone next Friday for our next installment, and we'll have somebody else on board. So thank you again, guys. Have a good night. Watch your ears, because we're going to do the outtake here.
do the outro.
All right.
Yep.
You guys have a good night.
You too.
Have a good one. Thanks, guys.